My boss's spoiled grandson ordered me to quit, or else. He never imagined that the evidence I'd uncovered would land on his grandfather's desk, and nearly destroy him instead. He slammed my door so hard the framed diplomas rattled. "Quit, or you'll regret it," he hissed, jaw tight, the kind of anger only an 18-year-old with a platinum card can afford. I kept my hands folded over the manila file I'd been nursing all week. "Good morning to you too, Tyler." He hated when I used his name like he was an employee, not the grandson of the founder. He wasn't technically either, he was a summer innovation associate, which was HR's adorable way of saying, kid with a badge and opinions. He'd lasted 4 days before forwarding me a string of bullet points titled Mandatory Process Changes, effective immediately. He wanted me, the operations manager who'd kept Ridgeline Hardware humming through a pandemic and a winter storm, to route purchase approvals through him. Through a teenager who called vendor terms vibes. "I gave you direct orders," he snapped. "You ignored them." "I followed policy," I said. "And your orders would have violated 3 contracts and a state regulation." Tyler leaned in until I could smell the spearmint gum. "You don't understand how things work here. My grandfather. Mr. Ridgeline made me operations lead when you were still learning algebra," I said, softer than I felt. "I understand exactly how things work here." His eyes flicked to the framed photo on my bookshelf, my daughter, Nora, on her 12th birthday with frosting on her chin, and me, in a paper party hat. He smirked, like love was leverage. "People are replaceable, Ms. Hale. He'll listen to me." The door clicked again. This time it was Mason, our receptionist, cheeks pink from the brisk elevator air, whisper calling, "Alma? Mr. Ridgeline wants you. Now." The 3 of us rode the elevator up in a silence bristling with unsaid things. My reflection in the brushed steel looked composed, hair pinned, navy blazer buttoned, pearls tiny as raindrops. Inside, my pulse drummed. I'd had 4 months of quiet digging, careful saving, matching PO numbers to shipping receipts, watching inventory counts do tiny disappearing acts. I'd asked questions and gotten smiles. I'd followed paper trails until they became wires. When the doors opened, the Ridgeline floor smelled like lemon polish and money. Sun spilled across a rug that probably had a provenance. Mr. Ridgeline, Walt to his friends, sir to the rest of us, stood at the window with his shoulders rounded in a way I'd never seen. He turned when we entered, eyes finding mine and then dropping, as if he couldn't bear what they might say. "Alma," he murmured. "I'm sorry. I'm afraid I have to." "Sir," I said, stepping closer, feeling every decision of the last week's walking beside me. "Before you finish that sentence, please check your email." Tyler made a scoffing noise. Walt's hand hovered above his keyboard like a bird deciding whether to land. He clicked. A new message sat at the top of his inbox. Subject line, "For your eyes only, inventory discrepancies." From me, timestamped 6 minutes earlier. Attached, the file in my hand, plus the spreadsheet I'd built night after night while Nora studied for her geometry finals across the kitchen table. Walt opened it. The numbers weren't dramatic. That was the trick with real theft, it hides in decimals. A pallet here. A half crate there. Charges to a shell distributor with a sun-washed website and no physical address. Receipts authorized by. I watched the exact second he found the signatures. His face drained. He sat. He reread. He scrolled to the last page, where I'd linked the PO approvals to the payment approvals. Each line stamped with a rubber-clean digital signature. Not mine. Not Walt's. Tyler darted forward, grabbing the mouse. "What is this?" "She's making stuff up." "Grandpa, she's trying to." Walt's voice was a thread. "Tyler, stop." I kept my breathing even. The second attachment is a download of the email headers from the approvals. IT verified the login times and IP addresses. I also included a recording, from last Thursday, of a call with the distributor. He confirmed the pickup instructions for pallets that never arrived. How dare you record, Tyler began. In this state, I said, a one-party consent is legal for business communications. I am the one party. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Outside, the city's late morning traffic sang its indifferent song. My palms were damp. I thought of the grocery list in my purse and the half-packed lunch I'd left on the counter because Nora had rolled her eyes and said, "Mom, no one eats carrot sticks anymore," and I'd laughed to keep from fretting. Ordinary life threaded through this room like a reminder. This job paid for violin lessons and heating bills and a new set of tires we'd needed more than we wanted to admit. Walt's finger trembled above the screen. He clicked open the last attachment, a photo, grainy but clear enough, Tyler, at the dock after hours, clipboard under his arm, signing off on a shipment that never crossed our threshold. His jaw worked. He looked at his grandson, and the air changed. "Grandpa, it's not, someone used my badge. She's framing me." "She's..." Walt's lips parted. The color drained from his cheeks. His eyes rolled, and his body tipped like the slow fall of a felled tree. "Walt." I lunged as the chair skidded back. Mason shouted. Tyler froze. I caught his shoulder and shouted for water, for help, for anyone, and even as I lowered him to the carpet, even as I pressed my fingers to the pulse point at his neck and felt the weak, stubborn thud of life, a thought sliced through me like cold glass: this was bigger than a spoiled boy. This was a map of rot, and I'd just put it on his desk. Somewhere in the corridor, shoes pounded. "Call 911. Mason yelled. My hands were steady now, because fear had given way to something cleaner, resolve. Tyler's phone buzzed on the table, screen flashing with a name I didn't recognize. It flashed again. And again. I looked up at him. "Who keeps calling you, Tyler?" His mouth opened, then closed. The phone kept pulsing like a heartbeat. I glanced at the caller ID, and felt the floor tilt under me for an entirely different reason. The phone buzzed on the polished mahogany like a trapped insect. Each vibration felt louder, more insistent, as if daring me to pick it up. I leaned just far enough to read the name on the screen. Kendrick's Supply Incorporated. My stomach twisted. That wasn't a supplier on our official roster, but I had seen it before, in those quiet hours at my kitchen table, cross-referencing invoices with shipments. Kendrick's was one of the ghost distributors, the company funneling money out of Ridgeline's books. Tyler snatched the phone, pressing it tight against his chest. "Private call," he muttered, but his voice cracked. Mason hovered by the door, pale and wide-eyed. "The paramedics are on their way," he said, looking from Mr. Ridgeline's still form to me. "Good," I answered, but my eyes stayed locked on Tyler. "Strange, isn't it? That Kendrick's keeps calling when your grandfather just collapsed after seeing their name on those files. I told you, someone used my badge." His face was blotchy now, color rushing in panicked waves. "You're twisting this to save yourself." I almost laughed. Save myself? I hadn't thought about self-preservation in months. Not when I started piecing together the numbers. Not when I found the fake distributor. And not when I realized the fraud wasn't just sloppiness, it was intentional. "You know what's funny, Tyler?" I said, my voice low. "I already traced the bank accounts linked to Kendrick's. The same shell accounts tied to the condo you've been visiting downtown. The one in your name." His mouth fell open. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Relief prickled through me. Help was coming for Walt. But for Tyler, there was no siren, no rescue. Only the truth unraveling faster than he could catch it. The door burst open and 2 EMTs rushed in, kneeling beside Walt, checking his vitals. They worked quickly, murmuring codes to one another. I stepped back, hands clenched tight, pulse pounding in my ears. One EMT looked up. "He's stable, but we're taking him to St. Vincent's. Family should follow." "I'll come," Tyler blurted, but the other EMT cut him off. "Not yet. We need space." As they lifted Walt onto the stretcher, his hand twitched against the sheet. For the briefest moment, his gaze flickered to mine. It was weak, blurred, but I saw it: recognition. Trust. Maybe even a plea. Then they wheeled him out, leaving silence in their wake. Tyler rounded on me, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You don't know what you've done. When he wakes up, I'll tell him everything. That you planted it all. He'll believe me." I took a step closer, my heels clicking on the floor, my voice barely above a whisper. "Then you'd better pray he never wakes up." For the first time, Tyler flinched. Outside the office, I heard the elevator doors close, carrying his grandfather away. Inside, Tyler's mask of arrogance slipped, and beneath it, I finally saw what he was: afraid. And fear, I knew, was the first crack in any wall. That afternoon, the office felt like a hollow shell. Word spread quickly: Mr. Ridgeline had collapsed during a meeting. The staff whispered in the hallways, voices hushed but urgent, like children gossiping after the lights go out. I walked past them with my chin lifted, though my insides quaked. By evening, I sat in the hospital lobby, the scent of antiseptic clinging to the air. Nurses bustled, phones rang, and a vending machine hummed at my side. I hadn't told Nora yet. I'd texted her that I'd be late, promising takeout when I got home. She sent back a thumbs-up emoji, as if everything in her world was as simple as fast food. "Family only," the nurse said when I asked about visiting. Tyler, of course, had already been ushered in, all crocodile tears and trembling voice. I pictured him leaning over Walt's bed, rehearsing excuses, weaving stories before his grandfather even opened his eyes. I couldn't allow that. I pulled my laptop from my bag, balancing it on my knees. My fingers flew, opening the file I'd prepared, the one with every invoice, every signature, every transfer. I hadn't sent it to the authorities yet. I'd been waiting. Waiting for the right moment, the moment when the truth would be undeniable. Now, with Walt's company hanging in the balance, that moment was here. The elevator doors opened, and I looked up. Mason shuffled in, clutching a bouquet of cheap daisies. He spotted me and hesitated. He's still unconscious," he whispered. "Doctors said mild heart attack. Prognosis looks good." Relief washed through me. He would wake up. And when he did, I needed to make sure the truth was louder than Tyler's lies. "You were in the office today," I said softly. "You saw what happened." Mason's Adam's apple bobbed. "Yeah." Tyler looked, well, guilty. "But Alma, I don't want to get dragged into family drama. I need this job." I leaned forward. "This isn't drama. This is fraud. Theft. And if it continues, there won't be a company to have jobs in." He glanced at the daisies, then at me. Finally, he nodded, almost imperceptibly. "If you need me to back you up, I will. Just make sure it's safe." Safe. The word lingered as I packed my laptop again. Safety had always been my North Star, for Nora, for myself. But sometimes the path to safety ran straight through fire. At 9, I finally left the hospital, night pressing cool against my skin. My car sat under a flickering street light. When I opened the door, an envelope lay on the driver's seat. No name. No stamp. Just thick paper and a faint chemical scent. I unfolded it with trembling hands. Inside was a single printed line. "Stop digging or you'll bury yourself." The street was empty. No footsteps, no idling engines. Just silence. I slid the envelope back into my bag, heart hammering. Someone knew what I was doing. Someone besides Tyler. And they wanted me to stop. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the envelope, the bold black letters seared into my thoughts: "Stop digging or you'll bury yourself." By morning, I had made 2 decisions. First, I wouldn't tell Nora. She deserved to focus on her school and her music, not on shadowy threats. Second, I would not stop. I drove into work early, the office still dim, the smell of industrial coffee drifting from the break room. My desk sat as I had left it, but I noticed immediately, my file drawer was unlocked. I always locked it. Always. I pulled it open. The folders were there, neat, untouched, or so it seemed. But one was slightly out of place, the corner bent as if someone with clumsy hands had rifled through it. My heart thudded. They were looking for my evidence. By 9, the rest of the office trickled in, buzzing with updates about Walt. Still stable, whispered Carol from accounting. Might be awake by afternoon. Hope crackled in the air like static. But beneath it, tension coiled tighter. No one said Tyler's name, though everyone thought it. I saw him once, striding down the hall with his designer sneakers squeaking against the tile, face pale, jaw set. He didn't look at me. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked cornered. Around lunchtime, I slipped into the archives room, where the old records were stored in metal cabinets. I wanted to double-check one last thing, the vendor lists from before Tyler had joined the company. My theory had always been that the fraud started with him, but the warning note gnawed at me. What if he wasn't the only one? The archive smelled of dust and iron. I pulled a drawer, papers whispering as I sifted through them. That's when I heard it, the faintest creak of the door. I froze. A shadow spilled across the floor. Looking for something? A voice said. I turned. It wasn't Tyler. It was Mark, the head of procurement, quiet, unassuming, the kind of man who blended into meetings without leaving a trace. His smile was thin, his eyes unreadable. Old contracts, I answered carefully. I needed to confirm some details. Mark stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The room seemed smaller suddenly, the air heavier. You should be careful, Alma. Poking around too much in these files, sometimes people misinterpret intentions. My pulse raced. Misinterpret? Or discover the truth? His smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. You've always been smart. Too smart, maybe. Just remember, loyalty counts more than cleverness in this company. He turned and left, the door swinging shut with a metallic thud. I stood there, hands trembling over the papers. It wasn't just Tyler. Mark was involved too, I could feel it in the careful menace of his tone. The fraud ran deeper than a spoiled boy's arrogance. This was organized. Protected. When I finally returned to my office, another email waited in my inbox. No subject. No signature. Just one sentence. Stay out of this, or your daughter will pay the price. I gripped the desk so hard my knuckles whitened. They knew about Nora. And at that moment, I realized, this wasn't just about saving my job anymore. This was about survival. The note about Nora had slammed into me like an icy wave. For a long second I couldn't breathe. Then something practical clicked on, fear is useful when it becomes fuel. I locked my desk, but that felt like locking an open door. The evidence had to be duplicated, hidden, and sent somewhere it couldn't be burned by a single family feud. I made 3 copies in the next hour, one encrypted on a USB in my glove compartment, one uploaded to a private cloud account I'd set up under a burner email, and one printed and sealed in an envelope addressed to an old friend at the state attorney's office, someone I'd helped years ago with a municipal procurement issue. It wasn't ideal to pull a legal lever, but desperate times call for desperate paperwork. Mason agreed to help. He slid into the break room as if he belonged there and spoke in the same whisper I had used when I first learned to soothe a frightened child, steady, calm. I'll back you up with access logs, he said. I can flag anything unusual and keep copies of whatever you need. He looked small beside the coffee machine but determined. I won't let them hurt your kid. He said it like it was his promise, not a favor. We set a trap, a routine inventory audit request, routed through proper channels, so anyone trying to cover their tracks would have to touch the flagged files. I wrote the memo in the sterile language auditors respect, no drama, only dates, line items, and signed authorizations. Then I slipped a small, inexpensive camera into a plant pot by the procurement cabinet. It was low-tech, barely more than a motion detector with a lens, but it would give us a time-stamped frame if someone tried to tamper with my drawer. I felt ridiculous playing spy in my own office. I felt righteous. They were the ones who had treated the company like a piggy bank. I was the one who'd learned its heartbeat. If Walt woke up and trusted Tyler, this would shake him awake to the truth. If he didn't, the state attorney would be less forgiving once the paper trail hit her desk. That afternoon, I called Nora during her break. Her voice was bright as always. "Hey, Mom. I've got rehearsal," and for a minute I let myself sink into normal. I told her dinner might be late. She sighed, complaining about homework, and I fought the urge to tell her everything. Instead I said, "I love you. Lock the door after you come in, okay?" She laughed, a small scolding. "Mom, I lock the door." "You know I do." Then the call ended and I held the phone a moment longer, tasting the safety of her breath. At 6 I drove home with a slow, careful urgency. The streetlights blinked awake. My building looked like it always did, mailboxes, a faded welcome mat, Mrs. Silva's potted geraniums still blooming despite the season. I unlocked my door and froze. On the hallway table, there was an envelope. No return address. No words. Inside, a glossy photo, the size of a postcard. Nora, smiling with her backpack, walking out of school, only the angle was wrong. Someone had stood across the street and taken the picture. Someone had followed her. There was a second thing tucked beneath the photo, a single line, typed in clinical. "Nice try. Keep digging and you'll lose what matters most." The hairs on my arms rose. I wanted to scream, to run, to wrap Nora in my arms and never let go. Instead I sat down on the stair, breath shallow, head buzzing with plans and threats and the impossible little comforts of domestic life, warm laundry, a mug Nora liked, piano lessons paid for. I realized, as the evening swallowed the city, that I'd crossed the line. There was no going back to quiet compliance. If I moved forward, it would be into a landscape where more than my paycheck could be taken. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Caller ID, unknown. My thumb hovered over accept. I pressed accept before fear could stop me. Silence at first. Then a low male voice, distorted, as if run through a machine. "Alma Hale. You don't know when to quit." My mouth was dry, but I forced my tone steady. "And you don't know who you're threatening. Leave my daughter out of this." A pause. Then a short laugh, cold, mechanical. "That depends on you. Shut your mouth, stop sending files, and maybe she grows up with a mother." Maybe. The line went dead. I stood there, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles burned. Every instinct screamed to call the police, but what would I tell them? Anonymous threats, a grainy photo? Without proof, they'd file a report and send me home with advice about better locks. I slid the envelope into a safe under my bed, double-checking the bolt. Then I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the pattern of scratches on the wood. I remembered every late night with spreadsheets open, every receipt matched, every small discrepancy circled. All of it had led here, to shadows that knew my daughter's name. The next morning, Walt woke. The news spread like fire. Relief buzzed through the office, though no one knew what he'd seen before collapsing. Tyler strutted in again, trying to wear his arrogance like armor, but there was a tremor in his step. I watched him from my office doorway, my voice calm but heavy with intent. "Enjoy your time, Tyler. Because when your grandfather speaks, your story ends." He paled. For the first time, I knew, he was running out of room to hide. When Walt opened his eyes and said my name, soft, unsure, like a man remembering a melody after a long silence, I felt a small victory like warm light. He remembered me. He remembered the company. That was everything. But memory can be coaxed. I needed proof. I met Mason in the supply closet after hours. The fluorescent hum made us conspirators. He handed me a thumb drive wrapped in a post-it, plant cam, March 11th, 4:03 a.m. His hands trembled like he'd swallowed cold. I grabbed it before Mark emptied the recycle, he said. I couldn't wait. We watched in my car, screen glow painting our faces. The feed was grainy, time-stamped in the corner like an accusation. At 3:02 a.m. the plant pot shivered. At 3:04, Tyler appeared, clipboard, nervous grin. He fumbled with the procurement cabinet. Then Mark slipped into frame, words whispered. They exchanged something small, a USB, maybe, or a folded receipt. Tyler signed a form, Mark nodded. They laughed, too close, too familiar. My throat closed. The camera angle caught more. At the edge of the frame, a second figure moved, taller, deliberate. I leaned forward, heart like a drum. The figure's coat hood obscured the face. For a terrifying second I thought it might be an evidence of a larger ring. At 3:07 the feed blipped, stuttered, and froze. The last frame was a gloved hand, black, damp, hovering over the lens. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and the color left me. Unknown number. Caller ID, location shared. A knock sounded at my apartment door while the video still looped on the screen. Someone was outside. Alma, a voice called through the door, low and urgent. It's Tyler. Open up. We need to talk. About Nora. My fingers hovered over the deadbolt. The car's interior smelled of old coffee and adrenaline. I could hear Mason's breath beside me, waiting. Everything narrowed to the lock and the single knock. I didn't move. My hand hovered inches from the deadbolt, heart pounding so loud I thought he could hear it. Alma, Tyler whispered again, voice shaky this time. Please. I swear, I didn't send that picture of your daughter. That wasn't me. Mason's eyes widened. From the car window, we could see his shadow beneath the hallway light. He was alone, or pretending to be. I forced my voice steady. Why should I believe you? Silence. Then, because they're after me too. Mark, he's not who you think. He said I'd take the fall if anyone dug too deep. He's using me. A scrape of movement, his shoes shifting. I don't want to go down for this, Alma. I'll give you everything. Just keep me safe from him. Mason leaned closer, whispering, he's desperate. That makes him dangerous. My gut twisted. Tyler was spoiled, arrogant, guilty, but fear stripped him raw. If Mark was the real architect, then Tyler was just the fool who signed the papers. The knock came again, softer this time. Please. I took one breath, then another. I had a choice, open the door and risk stepping into a trap, or keep it locked, and lose the only crack in their wall. I reached for the lock. I opened the door just enough to let Tyler slip inside. He looked smaller in the foyer light, no swagger, only raw, pleading shame. I'll show you everything, he said. Mark's transfers go through a code he alone uses. I can pull the logs. We drove to St. Vincent's like thieves. In Walt's room, I set the laptop between us and played the timestamps, the bank routes, the camera stills. Walt watched, pale and silent. His hand trembled as he reached for the screen. Is this true? He whispered. Tyler's voice cracked. I'm sorry, Grandpa. I never knew, until now. Walt closed his eyes, then opened them like a man deciding. He pressed the nurse call and then, as if to steady himself, spoke into the quiet, get security. Lock the building. No one leaves. We all froze. Footsteps sounded in the corridor, many, not one. They were coming toward the room. The door burst open. Mark stood flanked by two men in suits, his face a mask of calm authority. But before he could speak, hospital security filed in, summoned by Walt's call. Walt's voice was hoarse but steady. These men don't leave. Call the police. Mark's composure cracked. Walt, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Walt said, gripping my hand. Alma showed me. The evidence did the rest. By dawn, the police had Mark and his partners in custody, the fraud unraveled like a rotten seam. Tyler faced consequences too, but his arrogance was gone, what remained was a boy who'd been used as bait. Walt promised he'd never sit near the company's books again. As for me, I walked into the office weeks later, not as an operations manager under suspicion, but as the woman who had saved Ridgeline from collapse. My desk plant had no cameras now, only green leaves reaching for light. Revenge hadn't been loud. It hadn't needed to be. Quiet truth had been enough. And when Nora hugged me that night, safe and unknowing, I knew I had won.